Hey, you are listening to the Startup Selling Podcast, Talking Sales with Scott Sambucci. That's me. Today's guest is Jen Spencer. Jen is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Allbound. Here's why that's important. Today's topic is 100% focused on channel partners, referral partners, co-marketing partners, resellers, and affiliates. Whew, that's a big mouthful. Here's the thing. As I work with companies, especially startups, they're always looking for more ways to distribute their product. And oftentimes, of course, that comes from our own sales strategies and our own sales processes and tactics with our own teams, ourselves as the co-founder or founder of this company. But more and more often, there are more and more opportunities to also sell our products, or at least market our products or services through partners. And so that's why I wanted to have Jen Spencer on this podcast, because her company, Allbound, is 100% focused on helping companies just like yours really leverage these different partnerships. And so in the start of this short introduction, I mentioned things like channel, referral, co-marketing, reseller, affiliates. I always kind of group them as to one kind of topic and said, oh, those are all the same thing. I have a channel partnership or a referral partnership or a co-marketing partnership. Well, turns out I was wrong. And Jen really helps me and will help you to differentiate the difference between these different types of external partners. Throughout the course of the podcast, we're going to be talking about things like how do you structure the right channel partnership or referral partnership program, talking about things where opportunities in these partnerships where the partnerships typically fizzle out and how you can make sure that doesn't happen to you. She talks about how to use and set up your own CRM and have your own pipeline, your own sales pipeline just around partnerships and these different partnership types. And finally, we talked about the 4 pillars of good partnership strategy, which you talked about as content, collaboration, customer success, and culture. So we covered a ton of ground on this very specific topic and very important topic that can help your startup grow if you leverage it the right way. So really excited to have Jen on the program. I met her earlier this year at the SaaStr conference and was excited to meet her, learn so much more about this critical area of startup growth. And so asked her to come on the podcast after lots of back and forth because she is super busy. We finally got her on and got her to share all of her wisdom when it comes to setting up these partnerships the right way. So without any further ado, I want to turn over the content and your listening pleasure to my conversation with Jen Spencer. Here we go. Hello, wireless caller from Phoenix, Arizona.
Hello.
Is that Jen Spencer?
It is.
I'm looking at my Uber conference. My Uber conference shows you wireless caller from Phoenix, Arizona. You ready to roll?
That would be me. Yeah.
I hope so. Otherwise,
absolutely.
It would be really strange because I wasn't expecting anybody else on this line at this time.
I can go find somebody if you'd like.
Just for audio purposes, are you able to increase the volume at all on your side?
Let me see here. I'm using my headset.
That was whatever you just did was an improvement. It just sounded like you were just a bit distant from the microphone.
Oh, okay.
But that's good
right.
Where you are right now.
Perfect.
Cool. So let's do this. Ready?
Yep.
All right. So everyone, welcome. As I mentioned in my introduction, I have with us Jen Spencer. And Jen, I'm going to build you up. So you can tell me if there's anything important that I missed, okay?
Okay.
So Jen is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Allbound, contributor and ambassador with Sales Hacker. Sales Hacker, you might know, is led by Max Altschuler and does some really great stuff in the startup and sales space. She is the host of her own podcast, the Allbound podcast, also on iTunes. She's been featured on the B2B Growth podcast. She's previously worked at the Arizona Theater Company in marketing public relations, and I definitely want to ask you about that. Looks like you own the hashtag Never Sell Alone, and maybe most interestingly, you're the lover of really good scotch.
That's most important of all.
That
right?
is most interesting, perhaps most important, most interesting. Who knows? Where did you develop your love of really good scotch?
So I blame my parents because when I was a baby and I was teething, apparently they used to put scotch on my gums. And so I think that it started way back then. But then I had family who would, have a cocktail before dinner, and I just started drinking with the old men. So
Wow.
just started really liking scotch, and I don't know, I like nice things, so I tend to go for the best, whatever it is.
No, that's a good habit to get into for sure. So what I'd like to do, Jen, I want to start with a couple of kind of baseline questions just to set the tone and the direction of the conversation. And then from there, I want to dive into getting your perspective and expertise for the audience here, for the listeners. And so the first question I just wanted to ask you is, what problem does Allbound solve, and who are your target customers?
Sure. So Allbound helps solve a few problems as they relate to channel sales and marketing. So if you look at businesses globally, about 70% of business is actually sold through indirect sales channels. So through resellers, distributors, agents. And there's this problem, there's a disconnect, and tends to be a lack of transparency and collaboration between the vendor or supplier that is either manufacturing the good or, creating that product or service, and then that reseller or a partner that is actually helping bring that product to market, directly, interacting with that end user, that customer. So there tends to be a big lack of knowledge transfer, both from the supplier to the partner, but then also there's some really critical information that the partner gains in working with the actual end user, the actual customer. And that information doesn't seem to get back up to the supplier. And so, at a very high level, that's a problem that we aim to solve at Allbound, to really help improve transparency and collaboration across an entire sales ecosystem, which includes those indirect channels.
So I imagine,
good.
yeah, I was going to, maybe you're about to answer this. I mean, you can look at pretty much any industry, any product, whether it's hardware or software or services, very broadly, and then dialing into each of those. Are there specific customers that your company, Allbound, is focusing on, at least right now?
Absolutely. So we are very much focused on working with businesses who have recurring revenue model types of organization. So where there's an as a service type of model, that might be software. It's, most often it's software. There are also services. If you think about the way that business has really evolved, especially over the last, I would say, like 4 to 6 years, we're seeing this surge in the number of as a service type of models. It's a really great model, that the idea of recurring revenue. I'm going to subscribe to something. I'm going to subscribe to, whether it's food being delivered to my home or it's software that I don't want to own. I'm just going to basically rent on a per month or a per user basis. It's a new way of conducting business, but a recurring revenue model type of organization does require different kinds of support. And so that's what we've really focused in on, helping organizations who have a recurring revenue model, but who sell through channel.
Okay, cool. And so you just use a term there, and you mentioned it a couple times in your first answer. And this is where I wanted to start getting some expertise from you, because this is a question that I get from a lot of the folks I work with, typically startups, and oftentimes they're SaaS companies, software as a service, selling to the enterprise. And one of the questions that I get is like, what's the difference between channel partner and referral partners and co-marketing partners and resellers and affiliates? I think a lot of times we hear that, whether it's from an investor or we see in our marketplace, oh, this company has a reseller agreement with a consulting firm or with IBM or whatever. Though my sense is that these are obviously very different. That's why we use different words to describe them. So could you help, somebody who's kind of maybe collecting all of those terms, channel, referral, co-marketing, reseller, affiliates, that might be grouping those as to kind of one big block of stuff? How would you describe that, or how would you define some or each of those definitions, or some of each of those terms?
I think, in any organization, you're going to see some similarities, but then you're also going to see some differences in the way that they have their channel partners organized or tiered. But I think there's some commonalities we can talk to here. So the one very simply is referral partners. So referral partner is literally, someone who's going to refer business to you. So it might be that, you may offer a solution, you may offer some kind of a service. I meet somebody in my world. I say, I'm going to refer this business to you. I think you could really help this person. Maybe there's a benefit for me. Maybe I'm going to get a kickback on that. Maybe I'm going to get a commission, or who knows? Maybe we have some kind of other agreement. But basically, I'm just going to refer you business. So in a referral partnership, I think about like who owns the customer relationship, and the supplier, the vendor who is selling that software. That they're the one who's going to own the relationship, and the referral partner is basically just almost like a light salesperson who's volunteering time, really. And so in some cases, like I know, like at Allbound, we have referral partners. We pay our referral partners a 10% commission. So we think of it like, hey, our sales people are still going to have to work that deal, but it costs me $0 in marketing to acquire that lead. And so I'm going to pay my partner basically what I would have paid in marketing dollars.
So you basically replace your customer acquisition cost with a commission.
Exactly.
Okay. That's interesting.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please.
No, so the difference between that and then maybe like a reseller, and where things get a little more complicated at a reseller level, because you can have there's a few different ways that a reseller model could work. It can be just a straight like value-added reseller, where as a reseller, I'm basically purchasing this product at a wholesale price, and then I'm selling it at another price, and I'm making the profit, in that way. There are also resellers that they're going to be, reselling your solution. They're going to be charging the customer the same amount that you would have charged the customer, but I'm going to perform as the partner additional services that are associated with it. They might be implementation, configuration, if we're talking about software. There might be some professional services that I might be adding on to that. And then from that perspective, that's where I'm going to make my money as a partner. And then that even expands out. You could have it co-branded. You could have a white labeled reseller who's basically just taking the product or service that you provide and, stripping your brand of it, and it becomes their brand, and then they're selling that out in the market. So there's a number of ways that those resellers, relationships can work. But I think, the two biggest differentiations are a referral or a reseller. And what it's going to come down to is really who ultimately owns that customer relationship.
Okay. So the reseller, or you mentioned some of the support around implementation. This is something I've had some experience with in the enterprise software world, and I also want to come back to that as well in just a little bit. So I guess a question that I get a lot of times that I wanted to ask you, and a lot of times these podcasts are me collecting questions from people I work with and then finding an expert like you in this particular topic. So as a startup, a lot of times there's obviously pressure to try to go out and find customers and expand our reach and try to show some scalability. And so like when should I start thinking about channel partners or referral partners or resellers? Because on the one hand, like I need to figure out myself how to get my first customer, my first 10 or my first 100. But on the other hand, I've got this bandwidth restriction because of whether it be team size or lack of a structured sales team, or my ability to support a lot more than 10 or 15 or 20 customers. So like when is too soon to be thinking about channel, reseller, referral partners? And maybe it's not one answer for each of those three. And what are a couple of signals to a company that it might be time to start thinking about these kinds of relationships?
I think it's a really great question, and it's one that we hear often as well. So I think when it comes to a referral partner program, I think it's wise to be thinking about that as early as possible. It's just something that's going to kind of creep in. It's going to affect as you're building out sales compensation plans. as you're building out marketing strategies, it's something that you want to have sort of in the back of your mind. And maybe you don't do anything about it, right at the onset, but just to be thinking about it. And I would advise the best time to really start a referral type of partner program would be once you have identified the right, market fit for your product. Especially in the startup world, it takes, 6 to sometimes 12 months to really identify, okay, this is our ideal customer profile. Maybe we thought it was going to be another type of organization. And as we've really settled in, we've discovered, we've had to make a couple of little tweaks here and there. So when you are able to identify that product market fit, you can identify that ideal customer profile, and then you are able to build out your buyer personas. Once you've done that, there's nothing stopping you from launching a referral-based partner program because it's very easy at that point. At that point, you're going, okay, who else is out there who is also interacting on a regular basis with my ideal customer profile? Who else is out there that can get me in front of my these buyer personas? And that's where you start identifying complementary companies that would make potentially good referral partners for you. And so that should just be a natural extension of your demand generation effort.
Okay. So that's the referral partnership. What about specifically, say, like a reseller? Is there a different time in my company's life that I should be considering resellers versus referral partners?
Yes, absolutely. I think, and every organization is I use the caveat, like every organization is going to be different. I know for us, we believe, you really want to, especially if you've got, let's say you're selling software and there's implementation involved. Most resellers want to own implementation. That's where there's money for them. It's in the services. So they want to own that. So you want to make sure from your end that your product and your infrastructure and your organization is set up to support a reseller. So the way that some organizations have kind of solved for this is every one of their resellers gets assigned a customer success manager, just like one of their customers would, because that partner, that reseller partner, is just as valuable, if not more valuable than that one customer, because that one partner might represent 10, 50, 100, customers for you. So you want to make sure that you've got the infrastructure. And unfortunately, it's a lot of environments, you're not set out where you've got, tons of resources to be able to allocate an individual person to that role. So I think that's something that sort of keeps people from jumping right into a reseller model right off the bat. It's really just making sure from a structural perspective, you can support that partner, or that your product is maybe it's self-service enough from an administrative perspective, so that a partner could go in on the back end and make changes and tweaks. And you just got to think about it like, what are the things that you have to do to support your customers, and are you prepared to hand those reins over to to a partner?
Yeah, that's
There's
interesting.
a lot that needs to be done.
Yeah. So, well, you mentioned two specific kind of signals there about reseller in terms of how mature am I as a company? Like one is, am I clear as to what the implementation is going to be for most customers? So, for example, if I'm selling enterprise software and it needs to hook into Salesforce or it needs to hook into some other back-end system, have I done that at least a couple of times to know what's the playbook for, connecting my software application to, say, Oracle or to Microsoft or to Salesforce, as an example? Because if I haven't done that myself, then I can't write the playbook to hand over to a reseller to do the implementation. Otherwise, they're going to likely screw it up, or I'm asking them to figure it out for me, and that's probably not the best thing for me as a startup. I want to be able to really know what it takes to properly implement with a customer, because then it could also hold the reseller accountable if for whatever reason the implementation doesn't go well.
Right. I mean, the only exception really to that would be if right from the onset you identified that your company is not going to be owning the implementation at all. And perhaps the model that you want to set out to create here is hand in hand with a partner, and you're going to work with a partnering organization or organizations that are going to be doing all of the implementation and onboarding of your customers. I mean, that's always a possibility, but I think it's just if like you said, if you're planning on doing, the core implementation for your customers and owning that, you really want to make sure that it's a well-oiled machine before you bring a partner on board.
Yeah, and I guess I was thinking at the earliest stage, if I'm truly a startup looking at my first customer, my first 10 customers, um, I might not even know what systems I would need to be hooking into until I get into a couple of customers. So we had this at Blend. I've mentioned this in the podcast a couple of times. It's enterprise software selling to banks, and so banks and lenders. And so whenever we walked into those first few customers, we frankly had no idea what the backend systems were going to be like. Which were they? Did they even have APIs or SDKs? Like what would it take for us to implement with those types of customers? And after we did a few of them, then we had a better, clearer picture of what it would take. And down the road, then we might be able to hand off. We thought about, okay, once we've done 10 of these or even 5 of these, now we pretty much know what the playbook is, and we'd be a lot more comfortable handing it over to a big consulting firm, say like Cognizant or PwC or somebody like that as a reseller and as an implementer. Okay, we are off and running with Jen Spencer. Got a couple of quick asks for you or from you. The first ask is, listen, if you have been listening and are listening to this podcast, which you are right now, chances are you're probably enjoying the content. I've got lots of repeat offenders in a good way, and that list is growing more and more every single week, every single podcast episode. And one of the ways that I would love to get the word out so that more and more people can hear all of the content that I'm delivering to you on this podcast is if you could help me out doing that exact thing. So 2 ways you can help me. One is tell a friend or tell 10 friends about this podcast and say, hey, I'm listening to this podcast called the Startup Selling Podcast. It's really awesome. You should listen to it. Get your friends to download the podcast so we can get the word out to more and more people. And secondly, if you'd be so kind as to go over to iTunes and leave a review so that anybody else looking for this podcast and content like it can find it really, really easily. And so they can read those reviews and go, wow, this looks like an awesome podcast. I should totally be checking this one out. So if you do those 2 things, tell a friend about the podcast, tell 10 friends about the podcast, and leave a review, I would really, really appreciate it. It jazzes me every single week, every single month when I log in and see how the podcast downloads and the listenership has been increasing every single month since we've been doing this for now. I think it's been about 18 months, and we're into the 30s when it comes to episodes. So really pumped about that. And it's one of my favorite things to do every single month is bring on guests, because I learn a lot, just as you're learning a lot whenever I bring on these guests for any specific topics that we're talking about related to startups and selling. So that's my big ask of you. Please take that time to share with your friends, leave a review, and that's all for now. So please enjoy the rest of the conversation with Jen Spencer. And so the second signal you mentioned about Reseller was Customer Success Manager. So that in it by itself, if I'm not mature enough that I even have a Customer Success Manager, probably means it's too early for me to be thinking about resellers.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if you have a recurring revenue based model and you've got software that you're selling, probably want to hold off a little bit.
Yeah. So we talked about the right time to think about external relationships, referral partners, reseller partners. What about are there other, like you mentioned, co-marketing and affiliates, those sorts of things? When should I be thinking about those as a company as I'm growing?
So I think, there's so many opportunities for co-marketing types of partnerships that you can, embark upon. And I mean, I think it's never too soon to start those. Again, I would use the same kind of the same reference point as a referral partnership. You want to make sure that if you're going to engage in co-marketing activity with another organization, you want to make sure that you're both speaking to the same type of customer profile. You're trying to reach the same buyer personas, and that's where you're going to have the most energy. And especially in an organization, if you're a small company, you're a startup, there's not enough hours in the day. So all of your efforts really need to be smart. And so I think that there's always some great opportunities with co-marketing, and you don't have to put anything formal around that. There doesn't have to be any kind of revenue share around it, or no one's owning one customer or not owning a customer. I mean, it's just marketing. So that's
Okay.
easy ways to get going.
Yeah. So co-marketing could be first and then see if that leads to some business. And then if it leads to some business with a co-marketing partner, then we have some data to support a referral partnership with that person. It's like, hey, we did this joint venture webinar, or we co-presented at a conference and look what happened. We actually got 10 customers because you introduced us to your, or because we were working together. Now we've got at least a baseline of what it would take to put together a referral partner strategy that would be interesting for both sides. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
I think so. And I think, but it's also good to remember that someone that you have a strong co-marketing partnership with may not ever be, a referral partner for you. And I think that's okay. It's the best types of true, when we talk about partners, and when we talk about selling with and through partners, the best types of partners that are going to provide you with a more predictable revenue stream, there's got to be a symbiotic relationship between those two entities. So there's got to be something that, as a vendor, I'm able to provide the partner that the partner finds value in, and vice versa. And so they can't just be, not kind of nice to have. So I think a lot of co-marketing types of partnerships are probably more on the nice to have side of things. So not everything that you do is going to evolve into a formal referral partnership. That's okay. I think that's just the way it works.
So that's a really good segue, because I wanted to talk through, structuring these relationships, because again, as a startup, a lot of times I might find, a potential resale partner or referral partner first. And if I don't have too much history as a company or even working with these types of firms, how do I know how to structure these deals? We talked a little bit about, a referral partner could just be a replacement of your customer acquisition cost. If I'm to cost me $1,000 per closed lead, then I could just make that, the fee or the 10% that you mentioned. But I guess on a larger scale, how do I know, if I'm setting this up the right way, if ex ante I don't have a ton of history on which to base those compensation models?
So I think, the benefit, the beauty is here that, we aren't you're not the first person to ever start creating a referral partner program or a reseller program. So there are so many things that you can learn from other organizations. And the thing about partner programs is a lot of those compensation models are very, very public. So, you go right out there on someone's website, you can see, or you can kind of apply, you can ask, and so you can gather a lot of that information. So find out, what works. Look at other organizations that look, like yours, and you can look for that model. So, when we decided, okay, we're going to provide, we're going to give a 10% commission for any of the partners who refer closed business to Allbound. We're going to give them 10% of the first year recurring revenue. So, that was based off of, we looked at Hubspot, we looked at Marketo, we looked at Salesforce, we looked at other industry leaders and their referral partner programs, and we didn't try to reinvent the wheel. So I think that's plain and simple what you can do. And then I think you can kind of start out that way, and then the most important thing is going to be talking with your partners. So communicating with them, asking them questions, asking them, is this incentive, do you find this beneficial? What would it take to get more business from you? What's important to you? And sometimes what you hear might surprise you. It might not be about the commission. It might be about services. So for example, we have a lot of agencies that are our channel partners. And, one of our partners in particular said to me, okay, great, that 10%, I'm not going to say no to it. I'm not going to take it away. But honestly, what I want is I want you to refer me back business, because, they create marketing content and run
Mm.
campaigns, and then that content is going to live in Allbound, and so that's how they're going to be getting and calculating the ROI for their customer. But really, they're going to make way more money providing additional services than they are the 10% of our annual license. So that's what's in it for them. So you just have to ask and find out what's in it for them. And then I think your program will evolve as you start to add people to that program and just you have good collaboration with them.
Yeah, and I guess the tracking piece is obviously something that you all do as a company. And I wanted to ask before we dive into some of those tracking mechanisms, like, is there outside of just the tracking and the reporting, do you recommend any specific strategies as to how often to revisit the partnership, whether it's reseller, referral, co-marketing? Because I mean, my experience, I've had probably let's say I've done in my career 50 of these kinds of different partnerships. I can really think of probably 4 or 5 that worked out really well for both sides, and the other 45, they were like, everybody was all excited and we're like, yeah, we're going to do this referral thing or this reseller thing or this affiliate thing, and it never really materialized. And it wasn't that there wasn't interest, it just kind of fizzled, or there wasn't the right checkpoints along the way. At least that's been my experience. Maybe I just said them out wrong. Maybe I just needed your software. But what's a good kind of implementation plan for implementing a referral partnership or a reseller partnership? Like, do you recommend something that should happen in the first week, and then by the first month, and then by the first quarter? How should that look to make sure that we're properly vetting out this partnership on both sides to see that both sides are benefiting and that both sides are feeling the incentives that they should feel in order to take the action they promised to take?
So first, let me just say that the experience that you had of, okay, everyone gets excited in the beginning and then it just kind of fizzles out, I mean, it's very, very common. And it's because we get busy and we have a lot to do. And it might be it's a great idea, but, things just kind of, fall apart if you don't work at them. A partnership is just like a relationship. Yeah. And you've got to work at it. And so we embrace the philosophy of, we say partners are people too. I know that sounds really kind of silly or cheesy. Partners are people too, but it's something that is so overlooked. People often think about partners as entities, as companies, when they're actually not. It's actually, maybe it's a logo on a page, but there's actually people that are involved and that need to be mobilized to make that partnership successful. And I think about, the way that you enable and empower and train and work on a day-to-day basis with your direct sales team. And then I think about the way that a lot of organizations onboard new partners. And imagine if you treated your brand new sales rep that you just spent all this time hiring and, recruiting and hiring and onboarding, and you treated that person the same way you treated a partner and checked in with them maybe once a quarter. Right? You would never do that in a million years, right?
Right,
like you would never just shove this per salesperson in the corner and be like, all right, well, let's talk at the end of the quarter, see how you did. But so many people treat their partners that way. One reason that happens is because we see that a lot of channel organizations are massively under-resourced. So time and time again, walk into an organization, 50% of their revenue is coming through their partner channel, and there's 3 people that are responsible for all of that revenue. It's mind-boggling to me. But I think as far as best practices go, it's just flat out starting with remembering that these are people, remembering that they're salespeople, so that they're motivated to sell something for some reason. And really identifying, what that motivation is and how you can really tap into it. As far as the cadence of communication, I think it's about sitting down with a partner in the beginning of the relationship and outlining it. I was saying, okay, how often do we want to have meetings? How often do we want to have an in-person meeting? How often do we want to have, online meetings? Are there tools or resources that I'm going to be able to provide to enable them to kind of self-serve? I think it's just about being really transparent and mapping it out like in a contract and having these agreements of this is what I'm going to do and this is what you're going to do. And I think that just doing that alone will help tremendously. And there's going to be some partners who are going to want you to be more involved and have more, more personal touches. There's going to be others that are going to want to be more hands off. I think it's just about figuring out the right rhythm for each partner that you're working with.
So if I'm thinking, so you got my head thinking about sales, right? You mentioned about if I was hiring a salesperson and just stuck them in the corner, here's some marketing collateral, go knock yourself out, go get them, Tiger. But I assume I would also want to treat, potential referral or reseller partnerships also almost like my own sales pipeline, going out, like you said, once I know my customer profile and buyer personas, then looking at the whole ecosystem of who are the other companies that are selling to that buyer persona, and then creating, here's my target list, here's my lead list, here are my marketing qualified leads, here are my prospects, here are real deals in the pipeline, here's, so there's almost like a conversion funnel just for those partnerships, whether they be, co-marketing, referral, reseller. Do you have a sense for, is that a healthy way to think about it? Because that also tells me that I need to be able to spend a pretty considerable amount of time focusing on this if I want it to be a substantial part of my inflow, my revenue, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, the way that we've structured things for ourselves internally is, we have four different pipelines, technically, four different pipelines in our CRM. So we sell software, right? So we have our new acquisition of software customers. We have a pipeline just for renewals. We have a pipeline for professional services because we do provide professional services on top of the software that we sell. And then we have a partner pipeline. And there's $0 exchanged in that partner pipeline right now because we just have referral partners. And so, but it's where, we treat when we nurture a potential partner, we've identified a partner persona for that individual person. So we know what those personas are. We match them up in our, our marketing automation system. We have nurture campaigns set up just like we would do for a prospect. So they are a prospective partner. And so we actually, set them up in that same structure of, the stages of the deal are a little bit different from software,
Sure.
But we still have those deal stages. And then we take that one step further, and we have pipeline that lives in Allbound that feeds, into our CRM that are the leads that our partners are referring to us. And in that case, I'm just looking at that lead source. So I look at what are all my lead sources I have for contacts. I've got my inbound leads mostly. I've got ones I get from maybe a conference that I might attend, or, a webinar I might do with an organization like Sales Hacker. And then I have a lead source of my partner, and I can be tracking that. And so it's really looking at breaking that partnership down and looking at it from that big pipeline, lead acquisition all the way through the life cycle. That looking at that holistically, and not keeping it separate, not keeping all of those partner entities separate from everything else that you're working on.
Yeah, I think you just described it's like a mindset thing for if I'm a startup CEO or I'm a head of chief revenue officer, whatever that is. When I'm doing my weekly sales reports, it should be part and parcel to include the partner pipeline along with whatever other services I'm selling. And then also holding the team accountable, having some kind of quota. And if in the early stages, maybe it's not a dollar quota, but it's setting up a certain number of partnerships to get those rolling and do the learning. And then even having some incentive. Part of my compensation for my sales team or my marketing team should be based on having this partner approach, because if in fact over time it's going to be at least a contributing part of my overall revenue, I can't just say it's important to get partners. I need to actually create the systems in place that are going to give my team the right incentives and have a way of reporting as to whether or not we're making progress. And I actually never thought about it that way. Yeah, that's really cool.
Absolutely. we evangelize really four pillars of what makes a successful partner program, and it's content, collaboration, customer success, and the fourth one, which is most critical, is culture. So your organization has to embrace a culture of partnership, because you can see how it trickles into everything that you do. Building a partner program, it touches every single part of your business. So it's got to be part of your culture.
So I wrote these down really quickly: content, collaboration, customer success, and culture. So you just defined what you mean by culture. Could you define each of those other three: content, collaboration, and customer success? What is content as part of those pillars?
Sure, absolutely. So, content it tends to be the way that knowledge transfer happens. So ensuring that you are providing your partners access to content that is going to help them be successful. That content might be training, it might be internal price sheets, or it might be playbooks, competitive playbooks. It might be data or research that you've conducted internally that you can share with them. Whatever you're using, whatever you're putting together to enable your direct salespeople to be successful, that type of content needs to be placed in the hands of your partners, in addition to end user customer facing types of content. So that content is extremely important, just the way that content's important for your internal sales team. Collaboration is really that. I mean, that is a big part of this, because you can't have your partners siloed off in their own little realm. So in a lot of organizations, we hear these horror stories where you've got partners who are kept in the dark. They don't know about maybe new product releases, whether the last year about pricing changes. I mean, things that impact their business, especially if they've hitched their wagon to you and your brand. And remember, they're interacting with your common customers. So making sure you're collaborating them, making sure you're communicating with them, but you're also hearing back from them. And so having regular collaborative communication, and not just pushing your information down to them, but providing them an avenue to communicate back to you. So those two, content and collaboration, kind of go together. When we think about customer success, I think about, Tiffany Bova, who's now at Salesforce, formerly at Gartner. She talks about putting the customer at the center of everything that you do, making them the true north. And if you truly put the customer at the center of all of your decisions, then that's a great way to really embark upon customer success with your partners. So you have to think about, how does my customer want to buy? How does my customer want to be served? Does my customer need more hands-on consulting than what I'm set up to provide? And so do I need to bring a partner in to help support this customer? And so that's one of the roles I think that partners can play in your customer success initiatives. But it's just really keeping that at the core of everything that you do. At the end of the day, we're all in business to make money and to build our business. But if we don't focus on our customers and making them successful, then everything else is going to fail. And so that is also a huge part of what makes a partner program successful.
So if a partner program is not moving in that right direction, and these four pillars, that's freaking awesome. I love those. The four pipelines and the four pillars. I've got my money's worth out of this conversation. And I know that people listening have too. So I've got these pipelines, I've got these pillars. I'm doing what I can to make sure that this partnership is working. If on the other side, for whatever reason, the partner's not engaging, they're not showing up to meetings, they're not putting in the right time, I'm asking them, what else do you need from us? And they're like, oh, we're working on it, whatever that is. What can I do if I'm sitting here believing that here's a partner that I really know could be an important reseller, important referral partner, whatever that is, but they're just not engaging back? Are there any specific strategies? You can think of an example where you've had that situation, you've been able to inject new life into that partnership that started off really promising, but then fizzled?
I think, it all starts with that conversation and the honest conversation. And it might be that there is great potential in this partnership, but the timing is just not right. And so I think it's about just coming to the table together and identifying, the timing, this is not good timing for us. And let's put this on hold and let's revisit this in 6 months. Or let's revisit it next quarter, or whatever it makes sense. But it's having that honest conversation. Again, it's just like any personal relationship that you might have. And I think the biggest thing, I think that the hardest thing for people to do is to have that sort of breakup type of conversation. And it's not a fun conversation, but having that honest conversation is so much better than just watching that partnership completely atrophy. You want to have that conversation, maybe we both identify, okay, yes, there are synergies here, but this timing is just not right. Or it might be that, you believe that there's value, you see value in this relationship, but the partner really doesn't. And so if that partner is not matching you in your belief, then you've got to walk away from it. So
Wow.
I think it's really, there's not a hard and fast rule or, hard and fast advice to give. It's really going to depend on the individual partner relationship. And also you have to be prepared to identify, well, how much am I willing to invest? So if that partner says, well, I'd really like to be, I can really, join you here at this table, but I'm going to need X, Y, and Z from you. If you're not prepared to give that, then, that's okay, but you have to be honest with the partner and move on.
Yeah, and that's tough. I mean, it's frankly, I've been on that side of the table as a startup where you hate to say no to a big player, somebody that, they don't necessarily have to be a Fortune 500, but in your market, they could be a trusted, reliable source for identity. Like, hey, we're hitching our wagons to XYZ company that everyone in our market knows really well. But if that company's not reciprocating or giving us the support we need, while it's painful, if it's not healthy, you just need to walk away, or at least, like you said, let's just postpone this and just have that emotional maturity to say it's not working right now, and that's okay. Let's come back to it in 6 months or 3 months, or we're going to be at the same conference next fall. Let's sit down then and figure out a strategy to reintroduce this. And it's tough. I mean, it's easy to say, but it's really hard to do. But I think we owe it. I think as a founder or a CEO or somebody that's running this initiative, you owe it to your company to only spend the time with the people that are willing to engage with you. And if they're not willing to engage, it's okay to say not right now.
It's so interesting. It's like so many problems could be solved just by having a conversation. And I don't know why we don't do it. I talk to organizations and they have like low engagement with their partners. We say, okay, well, have you talked to your partners about what matters to them? We say, well, we send out a survey. Okay, well, that doesn't give you the full picture. It's a great place to start, but have a conversation. Imagine if you, again, going back to the relationship, imagine you're dating someone and you sent them a survey, right? You're not going to get the full picture of what's going on in that relationship. So conversations are just the most underutilized resource that we have at our disposal.
Yeah, and I got just a couple more quick questions. So one is, if I'm a startup, sometimes, and I've been in this situation where I might find a reseller or a referral partner, and they want an exclusive, and it's maybe because they see the promise in your technology, or they want to control the relationship for a period of time. They don't want, obviously, their competitors to have the same competitive advantage to resell or refer business to you. What's one piece of advice you give to someone that's getting asked for an exclusive?
I would really think very, very carefully before I agree to an exclusive partnership. I think we're starting to see less and less of them. And the reason why is because the customer owns the sales process so much more than he or she used to. So you've got to be nimble as an organization and be able to support customers the way that they want to purchase. So there'd have to be some humongous benefits to engaging in an exclusive partnership. I don't think we're going to see many more of them as as the years go on, as we progress.
That's good to know that it's trending away from that. Interesting. What's the most unusual partnership reseller strategy that you've seen? So if I'm looking at the whole ecosystem of companies that are selling to my target customer, my buyer persona, have you seen anything that's like completely wacky that you never would have expected ended up being a really successful reseller or referral partnership?
That's a really good question, and I think I might be stumped. I mean, I don't think, because any really successful partnership is going to be based on, it's going to center around that customer, and so it's going to make sense on some level, and so I don't know. I normally have great stories for you, Scott.
No, that's okay.
I don't think I have anything.
Well, I think a lot of times we would say, well, look, I'm selling enterprise software, so let me try to partner with a consulting company that could do implementation. Or if I'm selling, say, a CRM, maybe I want to work with somebody who's has a marketing platform, because those are kind of part and parcel. They're really close cousins to each other. It's just one step away from the business activity. So I was just wondering if there's a situation where, say, like somebody selling phone systems was able to recommend a good CRM or was a good referral partner because, hey, if you're using our phone system, it integrates really well with this particular platform the best. Or even further from that, maybe the phone system is able to recommend some other piece of software that's not even related to selling. I don't know. I was just kind of, It's a question that popped to mind.
It's a good question. I think whenever there's somebody who's in a business to solve company issues, solve business problems, there's going to be so many different places that individual can touch. I think probably the most interesting types of partnerships I see are when a partner allows an organization to enter a completely different vertical, completely different space that company, would not normally be in. And I think that's the most exciting thing about building a partner channel, is the ability for really, for you to expand into places and spaces that you would have never gotten to on your own.
Okay, that makes good sense. So just to kind of wrap up here, what's a couple things what's one thing that you want people to know about Allbound and how you can help them? And then secondly, how can people get a hold of you?
So I think the thing I want people to know about Allbound would be, everything that I really just kind of shared and said on this podcast, if it resonates. I mean, that's what we focus on. So we really focus on helping organizations with recurring revenue models, helping them, whether you've got a partner program that has been in effect and you've got active partners, or you're just wanting to get started. We'd love to join you on your journey. And for anybody, we have a tool that we created, a free tool. It's called My Channel Score, just mychannelscore.com. And it actually uses those 4 pillars I mentioned: content, collaboration, customer success, and culture. And it uses those 4 pillars to score you in those areas. And not only does it do that, but it also provides some recommendations. So love people to take a look at that and take it and share some feedback with me. Love to hear any responses to that.
Yeah, I love that. I just pulled it up here on my browser, mychannelscore.com, and I'll absolutely put that in the show notes. We didn't get a chance to dive into the Arizona Theater Company, unfortunately, and I want to be respectful of your time. Have any particular causes or organizations or anything in general that you would like the listeners here to maybe take a few minutes to pay attention to that otherwise they've not been paying attention to?
Oh, I think there's a lot of causes that need our attention right now. But I think, I think especially, just startups, businesses. I think there's in any community that you're in. I know here in Phoenix, Arizona, we have Yes Phoenix. That's a community for locally owned businesses, organizations that are trying to really build something. So I would say, check out the Yes Phoenix community, or, wherever you are in the world. I'm sure there's something similar, and just kind of find ways to get involved and learn from each other, because there's so much that we could be learning just from each other, just by having conversations with each other, and get out of our own egocentric bubbles. Sometimes I think technology has enabled us to be a little bit too self-centered in our world.
Yeah, I agree. And there's something else. If I'm just going to maybe step out on the limb a little bit. You didn't mention this, but it's something I saw you tweeting about recently, which is looking at women and compensation in the marketplace. And I know that's my wife is a PhD economist, and she and her circle of friends have to battle this every day, where they're just, unfortunately, still not completely equal. And I think it's something that maybe, in a very male dominated world in startup land, I think there might be some inadvertent or even unknown prejudices when it comes to whether it's interviewing or comp plans or any of those things. And I know that's something that you've tweeted about and something that you seem to care a lot about. And I wanted to bring that up because I know that's something that you have publicly kind of made as part of your message. So I hope you don't mind me bringing that up. I can edit out this part of the podcast if you want to.
No, not at all. Yeah. If you follow me on Twitter, it's @Jen Spencer. I wear all my thoughts and my heart on my sleeve. So it's all out there for everybody to know. And it's being a female in a very, very male dominated space. There's things that I've experienced, things that I've seen over the course of my career. So I'm pretty loud about that. So I agree. It is a challenge. I think the biggest piece of advice, and then my biggest kind of platform as a female leader, is just, to not accept it, just demand more, and make sure you're in an organization that supports you, and as a culture that supports you, I think is probably the most important thing that you can do.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, what's your position? I mean, you're a leader within the organization, and you've obviously led other teams. As you've worked with other companies, is there one thing in particular that, if there's one thing that a male in this world might be doing inadvertently, they don't even realize it, that they should change or could change really quickly, that would make a big difference? Do you have anything in particular that pops to mind for you that, man, if we could just get people to do this one thing, that would be a really good start?
I don't know. I don't know if there's one thing that I can put my finger on. I think probably it's not making assumptions. So I think there's a lot of assumptions made about women. There's the assumption that I might be struggling with the fact that I work and that I have a home. I have 2 amazing kids at home, and that might be a struggle for me. It's not a struggle for me. It's totally fine. So I think just not to assume. I mean, I don't know what it's like to be a man. I don't pretend to know what it's like to be a man. So don't pretend that you know what it's like to be a woman, I think, is probably my biggest piece of advice I would share.
I like that advice. I like that a lot. And I'll make sure my wife knows that you shared that advice. She'll appreciate that too. So cool. Well, listen, Jen, learned a ton from the conversation today. I really, really appreciate you blocking out this time. I know you're super busy growing the company and traveling and spending time doing your own podcast. And so I've got all kinds of links here that I'll add to the show notes, linking to your LinkedIn profile, which has a lot of your contact information, your Twitter account, your company website, mychannelscore.com, a couple blog posts that I found on your blog site that I thought are really good, and some other things. So once the show is published on iTunes, we'll get all these notes out there. And if anything else that you want to share, if not, then we can call it a day.
Oh, thank you. No, this has been great. I always love talking shop. I love sales and marketing. I love partners. So this has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks so much for the time, Jen. We'll have to do it again soon. Have a good afternoon.
Awesome.
See
Sounds
ya.
good.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, let's call that a wrap. That is my conversation with Jen Spencer, Vice President of Sales and Marketing over at Allbound. As we talked about at the start of the episode, one of the biggest takeaways for me was understanding the difference, learning the difference, and being able to differentiate between channel partners, referral partners, co-marketing partners, resellers, affiliates. Turns out those are all very different ways of expanding your partnership strategy. And some have a specific place with your company and some may not. So choose one or two that are best for you and put that to work. I also really appreciated her outlook on the 4 pillars of good partnership development around what she called the content, collaboration, customer success, and culture. And she also talked about the honest conversation. Sometimes the timing just isn't right when it comes to setting up these partnerships. So let's not force it. If the timing's not right, then let's come back to it in 6 months or in 3 months. And at the end of the day, let's just make sure that we're really treating these channel or reseller or co-marketing partnerships as their own sales pipeline, because they're going to require their own nurturing, they're going to require their own selling, they're going to require their own identification of ROI for both sides. Otherwise, you can run around, sign a bunch of partnership agreements, and nothing is going to happen. And if nothing happens, what's the point of putting all that work into developing those partnerships in the first place? So I learned a ton from this episode. I've already put some of this into work for my own business since recording this podcast a couple weeks ago and the time that we're getting it up and running here on iTunes. And I think that if you take a couple of the key nuggets that you've learned from this conversation with Jen, I think you will also see the benefits of all the wisdom that she shared. So that's it for now. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, your week, your month, and your year. And we'll talk to you next time. See ya.